All right. Coming at you all the way live from the East. I got to get used to saying that. I'm in East Oakland now. I'm not in West Oakland. We have departed the studio due to the coronavirus. You win again, COVID. Just didn't make sense. But we're in the east side of the town from Oakland, California. I have to listen to all these episodes, and I noticed that there's something that I always say. I say, we have a very special episode. That's because all these episodes to me are oh so special. But this episode is a good one because, not just for the guests, but for the guests. So if you've been listening to the live streams, you see that on the live streams now I have a co-host. Pascal Robert, lawyer and journalist, writer for the Black Agenda Report, Huffington Post. I think there's a few more publications he's written for. I can't remember off the top of my head. But we met through Torrey Reed. And after we did a show together and had some conversations back and forth, Tori was like, I think Pascal might have a good thing going. And me and Pascal were like, yeah, I think we got a good thing going. And these shows have been great. If you don't know, we have our Tuesday live stream now has been picked up by Zero Books, which means we get more eyeballs on it. I love that. That's awesome. So every Wednesday on the Zero Books YouTube channel, and there is a link in the description of this show. You can see the Tuesday show that we do. The one coming up for this Wednesday, which will be the 20th, will be our conversation with Hannah Appel of the Debt Collective. They are running some older episodes of ours. So this episode is that I'm putting up right now is with I'm putting up a live stream that we did with Akuno, and a lot of times when I start these off, I have a clip that I play on the live stream, a YouTube clip from a movie or something, and it'll have something to do with the episode. And in this one, I played a clip of an interview that the first time I saw Akuno was on Chris Hedges' show on Contact on Russia Today a few years ago, like 4 years ago, something like that. And I really dug what he had to say, and it made me follow Cooperation Jackson, and I really dig what they're doing over there. So I've been trying to get the Black Socialists of America, Cooperation Jackson, and Kali Akuno on my show for some time. No response. I get Pascal Robert as a co-host. All of a sudden, I get Kali Akuno as a guest. So, I just want to say to everyone here, thank you, Pascal Robert, for making that happen and making a really good show happen. I think that what you guys are going to hear is going to be really informative, especially for people that have been disillusioned by electoral politics. I feel like a lot of people post the 2016 run of Bernie Sanders, and even, I shouldn't say just 2016, I would say leading up to the end of the Obama administration, I think for a lot of people, they started to get politicized because of the rise of Donald Trump. And for 8 years, there really wasn't a Republican foe to Barack Obama. On the surface level, I think for a lot of people, Barack Obama embodied some sort of like hero-like qualities. Even though we do definitely talk a lot about all the negative that happened during the Obama administration. I am not a fan of the Obama administration. So I think a lot of people got politicized and and electoral politics became the end-all, be-all for them for when it came to change and bettering their position in life, right? That hasn't always been the way. The New Deal doesn't happen just because FDR wakes up one day and says, you know, I should be a traitor to my class and help out the poor. Doesn't happen that way. Movements. Lyndon Baines Johnson didn't decide to do civil rights because he just one day was like, you know, I saw the dogs in the water hoses and I was like, no more. No, not at all. Movements made these things happen, and people have been moving outside of the sphere of electoral politics for some time, and that's why I try to have people like Hannah Appel on, Kali Akuno on. It helps give people hope, in my opinion, and then it just teaches us how we organize and how we gain collective power. That's why, to me, these shows are so important, because we can get caught up in the sphere of electoral politics way too much. I recently had, for the 100th episode, and let me just say this, thank all of you that got me to 100 episodes. Everyone that's been a patron, I appreciate you, because times have been tough and I've needed that little bit of money to pay for these bills to keep this show running. The program I use to call people in different parts of the world costs money. The program I use to stream live costs money. Just to keep the show up on SoundCloud costs money. Like, all this shit costs money. And it's because of you guys paying attention to the show, watching the show, sharing the show, that I'm able to keep doing this. So thank you. Thank you so much. We got to 100 shows. And the 100th show was a discussion I had with Mike Davis, who wrote a really, really cool book. Wrote several cool books, but one that I'm reading in particular called City of Quartz, and we were talking, and I just recently made a clip. So if you haven't done it, the This Is Revolution podcast YouTube page, which is youtube.com/This Is Revolution podcast. I make clips of these podcasts. I put music to them. Lately, I've been putting public domain video footage plus other imagery to them, trying to make them interesting and artsy. Before, I just had like a picture of the person and the audio over a beat. Now I'm trying to make it a little more interesting. But I asked Mike Davis, and you can go back and listen to this clip again. And I asked him, you know, did Donald Trump succeed where Bernie Sanders failed, by pretty much forming, you know, if we all can agree that the GOP is starting to fracture. And there is starting to become this Donald Trump wing of the GOP, which is a little more further right. And maybe people like it because the people within the party like it because those people are way more reactionary and they're quick to give them donations. I don't know. I don't know what it is. Maybe they really believe in that. I think that Lauren Boebert congressperson that was like giving out coordinates to where Nancy Pelosi was during that Capitol riot, that comes in with a gun. I think that woman legitimately believes the bullshit that she says. I believe that in my soul. I believe that in her soul, she believes she is doing the right thing, which is very frightening. If you haven't seen the movie Red State, if you're not a Kevin Smith fan, I'm not the biggest Kevin Smith fan, but I felt that Red State was maybe the best movie he will ever make. It was his attempt at horror, and he did a phenomenal job of it. And the premise of the movie is based off the, what are they called? Those people in Kansas. The religious nut jobs in Kansas. They always protest the soldiers' funerals because they say the soldiers protect, like, gays, so that's why they're evil. I can't think of their name off the top of my head. And I'm not going to Google it while I'm doing this. I'm not going to go back and Google it and then come in and edit this to make it sound like I knew what it meant or who they were. I don't remember off the top of my head what they're called. Anyway, you know who I'm talking about. But they're the antagonists in the movie, and what they do is they get young boys to think they're getting involved in some sort of weird sexual orgy, and they take him to the church, and then they kill him because they're sodomites in their mind. And then the ATF gets involved. It's an interesting. It's that religious sect mixed with what happened with the Branch Davidians and government overreach, and it's all in one movie. And at the very end, John Goodman, who's in the movie, it's a pretty good cast, and John Goodman gives this speech about blind faith. And I believe Lauren Boebert has the blind faith that John Goodman talks about in the movie Red State. So go watch Red State. It should be free on all those streaming services. But I said, if there's a Trump faction of the Democratic Party, or the Republican Party, sorry, did Bernie Sanders fail where Trump succeeded by actually creating a third party? And Mike Davis gave a great answer on why he thought that Bernie Sanders didn't necessarily fail, but didn't necessarily do what he should have done when it came to forming a more national, grassroots, worker-based, labor-based movement, and not just made the movement all about getting different people elected that are quote-unquote progressives. Because what I see happening is that these people on the left, in the left media sphere, get so disillusioned, because it's easy to get disillusioned with politicians, right? They say they're going to run on something, and it doesn't happen exactly when it's supposed to happen, and all of a sudden they're shitty people. And we have to keep politicians accountable for the shit that they say, of course. But there's this weird thing where they're going after the left, and the squad, which I feel is all a concoction of the media. Because there's a lot of, not a lot, but there's more progressive voices in Congress than just those 4 or now 6 people that people fixate on. And the fact that Katie Porter got booted from a committee that she was on says a lot about the Democratic Party seeing all those progressive voices and silencing them. So now more than ever, it's time for us to realize our power collectively and not keep being oh so fixated on electoral politics. So I will be quiet now, and we will fade into the conversation with Kali Akuno of Cooperation Jackson. Thank you. Also, if you haven't done it already, become a patron. We're putting more content up for patrons only. We just had a conversation recently with a good friend of show, Conan Neutron, about what happened. I think I haven't told you guys. Facebook deleted my entire personal profile, causing me to lose certain pages that I ran. Luckily, I was able to keep this podcast page, but I think when this ban is off of, I can't boost any posts because everything we do is technically political, so they won't allow you to boost any political posts. But yeah, they deleted my entire profile. I lost pictures, all because I wrote an essay, which I will link in the description, titled Kill the Poor, which if you listen to punk music, hopefully if you listen to the show, you are a fan of heavy music, because that's where the show started from. It's the title of a Dead Kennedy song. It is not a command to kill poor people, because I am extremely poor. Yeah, I called it Kill the Poor, and it's just about the way we treat poor people in this country. And I didn't think there was anything in it. There was no call to arms to storm a Capitol or anything like that. But still, my entire personal profile was deleted. No warning and no ability to appeal. So we actually talk about big tech and big tech overreach. That'll be a patron-only audio episode. So become a patron. help out the show grow. If you have the ability to, if you feel so inclined, if you want to help see this show grow, become a patron. So I will shut up now, and we can get into the show.
Spearheaded about what you're up against and how there are powerful forces that want to make sure this does not succeed.
Oh yeah, I mean, you start with just what's right next door to us in Mississippi, you know, in Rankin County and Madison County, and how they're trying to drain the city of Jackson dry. You start with our governor. You start with the more open and vicious Klan forces that are right next to us, and then you scale that up. You know, Trump has Jackson Square on his radar screen. Everybody should be aware of that.
That was Kali Akuno, co-founder, co-director of Cooperation Jackson in Jackson, Mississippi.
All right. Thank you guys for tuning in. That is our guest tonight, Kali Akuno of Cooperation Jackson. Pascal Robert, how you living?
Doing all right, brother. How you living, brother? How things out there in the West Coast?
It's okay out here, and
got to make the West Coast the best coast, brother.
In overcast Oakland, California. So let's without any further ado, let's not hesitate while we got this gentleman finally here. Do you want to introduce him?
Oh, brother, we can both introduce him here. This is the great Kali Akuno here from Cooperation Jackson, Mississippi, reviving aspects of the Black revolutionary struggle from the late 60s, early 70s period of Black socialist organizing on the land, taking back the land, and creating a vision for self-determination and cooperative economics. I'm a big fan of cooperative economic models. And I think that what Kali Akuno is trying to do in Jackson on that land that has such sacred history, and what the Jackson Kush Coalition is working on is important. And I would like to talk to Kali about the goals and aspirations of that history and some of the contradictions of having a Black political class, and they confront and how they struggle with that and their attempts to make forth this radical vision possible.
Well, let's not wait any longer. Without any further ado, coming all the way live from Jackson, Mississippi, Kali Akuno.
Pleasure to be here, brothers. How y'all doing?
We're doing all right, brother. We're doing all right. We're looking forward to this conversation.
How is everything in Jackson right now?
It's cold. Old man is stiff with some back problems. But hey, we Black and we breathing, so we can't complain at the end of the day.
My last time in Mississippi was 2015. Actually, right before this show, I was straightening up my room a little bit, and I found an old. I'm a touring musician, so I found a notebook we kept. You know, all the places we played, how much money we made, the gas we spent, and stuff. And I came back across to playing Oxford, Mississippi in 2015. And the year before I played Meridian, Mississippi, where they told me to leave.
Well, at least they told you. They gave you fair warning. You know what I mean? That's better than a bottle up the head, you know, while y'all hit the car. So yeah, at least you know they treated you right by Mississippi standards.
Oh damn, Pascal, you want to start it off?
Yeah. So, Brother Kali, for those who may not be aware of the political history of where the Jackson Cooperation Jackson Kush Klan, the NAPO, and all of these organizations that come out of the Republic of New Africa formation out of the late 60s and the radical period known as Black Power. Can you take us through a historical timeline of how these things, what are their ideological foundations, how they develop and when they develop in American history, and how exactly they connect to the Cooperation Jackson movement if you can?
Well, let me try to give a short, concise version if I can, because it's a long, deep, and complicated history. For instance, in part the term New Africa, actually a dimension of it comes out of the Communist Party and its program pushing for self-determination.
Black Belt thesis.
The Black Belt thesis in the 1930s. And that is actually taking from a small town here in Mississippi. One of the Black independent towns that was built up in the Delta. And they have a New Africa Road that's been up there now since the 1870s. So people's knowledge and understanding of this long-term quest for self-determination, for sovereignty and independence of people of African descent that have been colonized and enslaved and subjugated, what is now the settler colonial project of the United States, that has a long history. Our project in particular is a child, as you mentioned, of the provisional government of the Republic of New Africa, particularly the objective of what was in effect the second administration of the PGRNA, the Republic of New Africa, led by Imari Obadele, which took over in 1971, and charged the organization with actually returning to the land. And his administration determined that they was going to set up capital here in Mississippi, in a small town just to the west of where Jackson is now. And that was going to be the capital of the Republic, right? And there was some concrete movement to establish that occurred in 1971, where folks came down, set up shop, first moved in and acquired a house, which is literally right around the corner from where I'm sitting now, was the first house that they built and occupied, and where the infamous shootout in August 21, 1971 took place, which resulted in Imari Obadele and several other members of the Republic, the RNA 11 is what they were known as historically, where that case kind of emanates from, where the FBI, the Mississippi division of the FBI, the MPI, whatever, and the Jackson Police Department all basically crowded on folks and tried to shut the effort down. And there was a major confrontation that took place where the official anthem of and the clarion call for free the land, that's where that came from, right? That struggle that took place over a course of like a 2-week period down here in Mississippi in 1971. So, we, one of the formations that you mentioned that came out of that in the early 1980s was the New African People's Organization, NAPO, which in part emerged because of generational, but also political and ideological differences that had emerged among some of the different key forces within the New Africanist movement, and particularly the strategies that were being kind of formulated at that time, and some of the struggle over them around how do we gain actual self-determination, sovereignty, and independence. And so a group of folks that had been organized primarily, not exclusively, I mean, it was a couple of different formations that actually came together. Some forces that were part of the APP, the African People's Party, some forces that were part of the National Black Human Rights Coalition, which I think, a core group, Chokwe Lumumba and some other folks came out of that directly. And then some other forces of the group that was called Take Back the Land. The Ahmed Obafemi and some others were in. They all came together, after some years of working with each other to form the African People's Organization. And then that organization, after being heavily surveilled, persecuted, being under attack, raided by the FBI several times over, started to build a mass formation, which became known as the Malcolm X grassroots movement. And that's where folks of kind of more of my generation, enter into the fray. And that was created here, and it was launched initially here in Jackson, Mississippi in 1990. And it first started out as a coalition and eventually became more of a membership organization. And then out of that organization, many folks started to continue to press on, how do we attain the long-term objectives? And many of us, including myself, started with the notion that we needed to return back to a base building kind of program and orientation. This was a major shift of some of us, including myself, kind of a generational nature, where we realized that after September 11th and how that was going to play out, that many of the kind of strategies and tactics that were being used in the political rhetoric, et cetera, that was being used prior to that time were going to be vilified and kind of put on kind of a watch list, if you would, because we understood very quickly, off the top, I think a good number of us understood that there was going to be a new era, that they were going to use the excuse of what occurred on the September 11, 2001, to not only make COINTELPRO and all of its strategies and tactics legal, but to make it, the kind of dominant perspective of the society and the security apparatus, which all came true within the matter of about 3 months. So out of that, we started looking kind of just base building orientation. It took us a while to get there. But basically by 2004, this is within the Malcolm X grassroots movement, which was being kind of stewarded, if you would, and guided by the Cadre organization, which is the New African People's Organization, started to develop kind of our own 5-year plan. And right in the middle of that really kind of rolling out in 2004, 2005, Hurricane Katrina struck. And we kind of repivoted. We learned some critical lessons off that. And one of the things was some of the things that we were trying to do on a broad kind of national level evenly, all throughout the empire, that we weren't going to give up our work of developing chapters any and everywhere we could, but we needed to concentrate some work to have a more political impact and build an actual base that more things could emanate from. And that's what we really, in essence, I would say, revived the Jackson Kush plan, right? And the piece that we kind of really, I would say the Malcolm X grassroots movement really put at the heart of that was the more of the Jackson kind of component to it, because the Kush plan had been around for decades. Different iterations of that had been around for decades. One of the major champions of it, in the mid 2000s was a brother by the name, still living, so brother Dimitri Marshall, who's here in Mississippi, who was a president in the early 2000s of the PG, but a long-term, New African comrade and revolutionary. He's been one of the main people I've known past 20 plus years of just kind of reminding us of this program, putting it back in the middle. And just so folks know, Kush refers to a district within what we consider the New African National Territory, where there's 18 contiguous counties in Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas, and Tennessee that all straddle along the Mississippi River, where there are still Black majority counties in all the different kind of political and material dimensions of what you can potentially develop there, that constitutes what we call the Kush, or the Kush district. And so that plan, Brother Dimitri in particular, was trying to put that back high on the agenda of all the different New African forces that he can move around them in the early 2000s. Myself and the other cadre of comrades who were, then in our late 30s, kind of our generation, but particularly I was myself and brother Kamal Franklin, who's now organizing with the Community Movement Builder, CMB out of Atlanta, and building that up. We were some of the main folks who got on that, and what we kind of interjected, what now will be called a radical municipalist program. That's where the Jackson component came in. And we did a lot of research development with other folks, a brother by the name of Vaughn here in Jackson, some other folks, started a research team in 2005 and really just did the homework of what potentially could be possible and what are the things we needed to build. And out of that, over a period of time came the Jackson Kush Plan, which became a public document in 2012. So that's just some of the short, abridged version of, the Jackson Kush Plan. And Cooperation Jackson, we've always been very clear and explicit, is a vehicle created to execute the mention of that plan. And that is to build up, the solidarity economy. That was specifically what Cooperation Jackson was born to do in the context of serving that plan.
Would you be interested in elaborating for us what that solidarity economy encompasses? What exactly are the details that make this phenomenon something that is transformative as an economic paradigm, and is not only transformative, but aligns with an anti-capitalist vision?
Yeah, good question. Because, there's different understandings of solidarity economy. And a good number of them are not revolutionary or don't aim to be revolutionary at all. A good number of them, I would argue, actually just about rearranging the furniture of capitalism.
Right.
And just making, giving workers a better share and a better shot at improving their kind of work conditions and sometimes wages. I say sometimes because of the degree of
giving them a horrible share, but just being run in blackface.
Right. I was going to say the wages question sometimes actually works in reverse in some co-ops, because of the degrees of self-exploitation that it kind of takes to start one of these, and then often the degree in which co-ops have to survive with other kind of enterprises and other workers, and oftentimes to make it. So the revolutionary dimension of it is really, I would argue, very vehemently centered on the content of the political content and the political objectives of the folks who are doing that work. And you can approach it from a perspective of it being a tool of trying to, like in our case, something we're trying to do to accomplish two goals. One is self-determination for African people, but two is for it to be an instrument of socialist construction from below. And in order for, the solidarity economy to be kind of an instrument of socialist construction from below, it has to articulate ways of organizing workers for their own interests, not to just improve their own individual lot, but ultimately, how do you seize control over the overall means of production in a society? And without that vision, you can very much easily wander up into kind of a petty bourgeois deviation with cooperatives very, very easily, wherein you see yourself not only in competition with kind of other entities, corporations, entities, but not be in solidarity with the workers within those industries, right? And so, the solidarity component. Go ahead with the question.
I want us to go there, but I'd like Jason to enter in. He may have some questions that he wants to flesh out as well.
Okay.
If he has Jason, are you there?
I am here. I was doing some things on the technical side. Well, the first question I have is kind of a lighter question. This conversation is very serious. From my understanding, you are from California, correct?
That's right.
L.A.?
That's right. L.A. Watts.
Are you from what?
Born and raised in Watts.
So
I did not know you were from Watts. I knew you were from LA.
I am a Californian and lived in the South for a time. I actually worked in the Gulf of Mexico. What was it like for you when you first went from Watts, which and the South and California are very different? What was it like for you when you first went from Watts to Mississippi?
Well, given that my folks' country is hell, uh, other than a different kind of climate and environment, it really didn't. The first time I was there as youth, really didn't feel that much different. I mean, on my maternal side, my folks are from Mississippi, and from Louisiana. And we would take visits down here almost like every summer when I was really, really young. And our folks, particularly in Louisiana, own a considerable amount of land, that the family kind of inherited from the slave master who birthed my great-great-grandfather, gave a small portion of it to his black children and a larger portion of it to his white children, right? So we would go, and hang out and be a part of things like that. But it didn't feel that much different to me. I think it didn't, now mind you, it's kind of interesting because on the paternal side of the family, both of them was country as hell. But my grandmama used to, and I say that with pride. Don't nobody get it twisted.
No, we all say that with pride.
I know y'all know that. I'm just saying that for the audience. That they was rude people, basically. But so we was in Watts. I grew up in Watts, primarily Watts and Linwood, which is right across the tracks. But the home base for the family, my particularly maternal side of the family was over in Watts. That's the street I was born on, Corrosis Avenue. And my grandmama, who she lost several kids during the Great Depression, right? Out of Oklahoma, being in Oklahoma, lost several kids in the Great Depression before, her and my grandfather moved over to LA, basically to get away from that.
Yeah.
And they went through all the hardships of the Great Depression, and several other factors very specific to their kind of backgrounds. So from that, man, I was raised with a very kind of survivalist bunker mentality. My grandmama, from that experience, she had 2 years of food stored up every day. Right? She had cans, she had things,
yes,
just stocked up, and she was on this mission that ain't none of mine gonna go hungry ever again. I'd have been through that, went through that, and so she had a whole system organized, back in this back garage in the shed that they specifically built, on the house in Watts, where it was periodically every day a little bit came off the shelf, and every week a little bit went back in to replace it. So it was a system of in and out rotation. And we had chickens. She would go get rattlesnakes because she loved to eat rattlesnakes. She'd go get rattlesnake to eat. Go make have my father go pick them up from the shop over in Pasadena. She loved eating possum.
They sold rattlesnake in Pasadena?
Yeah, they sold rattlesnakes in Pasadena, back then. You can go get them.
You had to have the underground hookup for that.
Well, I mean, you had to know how to treat them. That was the thing. But she loved to eat some rattlesnakes, some cactus, some mountain oysters. I didn't know what mountain oysters was. I used to eat them. I didn't know what the hell the thing was until I was about 18 and went to college.
Mountain oysters are?
Mountain oysters are bull balls.
I think his screen froze.
I know what they are.
Well, he's from Kyle, he's from New York.
Well, mountain oysters are bull balls. This is something that cowgirls used to eat, man.
I grew up in New York around a bunch of Caribbeans, man. Cow cod soup is a delicacy. You know what cow cod soup is?
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, an oxtail. Yeah. Oh yeah. So we didn't. You know how people didn't let nothing go to waste now. It was in something.
It's interesting to hear your story going from LA to the Deep South, because there is a difference in culture, and I went from Oakland, California. I'm born and raised in the Bay Area.
Mm.
To, I don't know if you know where the docks are in Mississippi, or not Mississippi, I'm sorry, Louisiana, but it's in the cuts. I thought it was going to look like San Francisco docks. I was like, oh, they dropped me off in the middle of the swamp and told me to get on the boat. But that being said, growing up in LA at that time, with police starting to get a little more heavy-handed, and the rhetoric of gang violence and being the reason du jour for police to be so heavy-handed, I see a lot of that happening again now.
Oh yeah.
With what we're seeing transpire, of course, in the Capitol building. What is the climate where you are now in Jackson, and how are you guys handling that?
It's tense, but let me give folks a little breakdown, because in its own kind of way, Jackson is a liberal bubble in a sea of reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Jackson is over 80% black. It's overwhelmingly working class. Real unemployment here easily hovers around like 50%, like real unemployment, not that statistical, anomaly in those games that they put out to folks around who's seeking employment or not, right? In the community I live in, particularly since the pandemic, I mean, I literally got to go out of my way to see white people or anybody else. I literally got to drive someplace. So, there's a nickname that folks have for Jackson, which is Jafrica, and it can feel like that. That you just surround us, and in that regard, you really kind of shielded from what folks might think of is the good old boys, the sons and daughters of Dixie and the sons and daughters of the Confederate. You're not directly connected or in their realm unless you kind of go out of your neighborhood. Now, soon as you cross over the Pearl River, which is, Jackson's eastern border is largely defined by the Pearl River, and Hinds County, where most of Jackson is in, the city of Jackson. It actually is in 3 counties, but most of it, the most of the landmass and where most of the people live is in the Hinds County portion. As soon as you cross over that Pearl River, and you head over into some of the other cities and counties that are majority white, you enter into Klan country, you enter into Trump land real quick, and folks, the thing I love about this place, tell you the truth, just to be honest with, is that all the racism and everything is just right in front of you. It's right in your face. That don't mean people are like calling you N-word and all that other kind of stuff all the time. Because there really is no need on a certain level. I mean, they just let you know what time it is from the nature of the structure and, all the different forms of behavior and exchange that are set up. So, I might head over to Pearl, or I might head over to, Madison's a little bit different. It's more affluent up that way, which is to the north. But the Flowood, some of these other places where most of the retail in Jackson has been removed from Jackson, over the course of some decades, and all put out there, even though they don't have the population density to hold and support those businesses on their own, right? So, if you went and looked at the development of the suburbs around here from a business perspective, there's no, like if you want to set up a grocery store and all the things that they tell you, well, you got to have this population, this and that. Nah, like none of this fits that description, because they know that they can get us, and they have to force us to go out into their communities to do a certain amount of shopping. So they just live off the leeching of this community. But that being said, I can head over there and do business of a certain kind, but it's very clear, it's like sundown town. You best to get,
by dark, you best be gone.
I didn't know what those were until I started doing a lot more extensive touring in the South, and then after a while, we started to avoid state routes. If I looked on the navigation and it says state routes, it's like I would take an interstate all the way.
You want to take the interstate? You want to take that federal highway? Yeah, that's what you want to stay on. But so it's there, man. I mean, I give folks this kind of like an anecdote, which is interesting for this overall political moment. I kept saying to folks, people like, oh, Trump is going to get creamed. And I was like, he might get creamed where you at. He going to win here. He going to win resoundingly. Because he's got a base here. Not just folks who, want to support him because he's the Republican or he's the conservative piece. Like, no, he has a base that was very enthusiastic, that was out on a march, on a mission, pubbing him up. And if you came here, touring through this place, say in September, October in particular, you would have been completely underwhelmed by the level of support Biden had, because there was no Biden signs anywhere. I don't think I saw one. There was no Biden signs anywhere.
I'm from out here. I'm from California. I didn't see any Biden signs, if that's any context.
No, I mean but this was I was telling people it's going to be more close because he had a loyal following. He represents in part the movement, and we need to deal with that. The other side of the equation was just voting against Trump. It wasn't a vote for Biden. It was primarily for most people, I just want this cat gone, right? So there wasn't that much kind of enthusiasm on a certain that there was just a representative of the threat. But here, Trump really represented a section of the movement that had been growing here and had already took over the state legislators some 7 or 8 years ago. So we had a joke, in the circles that I run in, when Trump was president. The joke was, to everybody in the country, welcome to Mississippi. Now y'all gonna get a taste of what it's been like here since the 1890s. So that's been kind of the cold, reality and the political rhetoric that comes from the political leadership. It's a little bit more slick than some of the stuff that Trump articulated, but same message, same intent, same brashness, same boldness. And if you look at the top political class here, Phil Bryant is still running around doing some special projects for Trump right now. He's got put on some conditions at the end of the day, and the current governor was a diehard, Trump supporter and is to this day. So they saw their interests represented in him, and best believe they're not going anywhere. People think, what happened on the 6th was an aberration. Think again. If you think that those forces are going to disappear, fade away when Trump is gone, folks also think again. This has been the core reality, and because it's so much in your face, some aspects of organizing here are profoundly easier than anything I ever found living in California or living in Washington, or my time in Louisiana organizing there, or New York organizing there, or other places I've been. Because here there's no great push to convince people that they are oppressed. It's more or less, will your solution work? Right? Is what you advocating actually going to demonstrate some results? So it's more convincing folks of the positive, because folks are very clear on what the negative is and what they need to do, to combat it. So in that sense, some of the things here have been much easier than almost any other place I've ever lived, just in terms of the people's consciousness. And what folks are willing to do, and the level, to a degree, of political engagement. Folks still don't quite, I think, grasp that roughly about 1/4 of all Black elected officials, just as a measure, about 1/4 of all Black elected officials in this empire are from the state of Mississippi. And that's in part because of that concentration in that Kush district, which is, the large portion of it is up in the Mississippi Delta. But it also just speaks to the level of political engagement that folks have about representing their own interests, however limited that may be, in the confined structure that exists. So the people do that continuously as an expression of trying to move things forward here. But that's because of the type of clarity that the situation provides here.
And that Kush district, let's also let people know if that's the 55, which runs up your state, and the 55 goes all the way up to Chicago.
Roughly up to Chicago. Yeah,
Okay.
you got to go through St. Louis and then it veers you, but that takes you straight up to Chicago. It goes from New Orleans to Chicago. It's that route.
And if people don't know, if it's an odd number interstate, it's north-south, and if it's even, it's east-west. And then the 20 crosses that, which takes you all the way. I know Dallas is easy.
The 20 would take you. It takes you all the way over to El Paso, and then you'll wind up connecting to the 10. You know that 10 will take you from California all the way over to Florida. To Florida.
Yeah,
to St. Pete, I think, if I remember correctly. So that those are the main arteries of the empire, mediating traffic, movement of goods and services, throughout this place. So Jackson, so folks understand that Jackson was not the original capital of Mississippi. It was a chosen and designated capital afterwards, both for political reasons to kind of be in the middle, and to take some of the power off of Natchez, which was the original capital, and that kind of old planter class, and move it up. But it also had to do with the infrastructure, basically that was built up after the Civil War, right? During the Reconstruction, and it was initially built upon the kind of railroad terminuses that run you from New Orleans up to Chicago. And then the 20 and the 55 were later developments, from the urban renewal period, so-called urban renewal, Negro removal period, that basically just intersected and corresponded and overlapped with a lot of that old development. So Jackson, primarily, if you really want to understand who and what this place is, it's a transport hub, right? And it's a minor node in among moving goods and services from New Orleans to like St. Louis and up to Chicago, going north to south, and or south to north, and from east to west, it moves primary traffic from Atlanta to Dallas-Fort Worth. Like, we connected to all those, and there's all these little nodes that pop up along that route. So if you keep going, say the 20, to the east, right? The some of the next biggest places you're gonna run into Meridian, then you're gonna run into
Birmingham, or no?
No, you run up Tuscaloosa, then Birmingham, right? And then if you go, head to the west, you're gonna run into Shreveport, and then you're gonna run into Dallas,
Louisiana, and Dallas. Yeah. And I know Pascal wants to get in because the black political class is definitely something that we've been excited to talk to you about.
Yeah, you opened the door when you said that 1/4 of black elected officials came from that Kush kind of area. That's just go. But something else you talked about, you said that was very valuable to me. I am not one of the. I grew up in New York, which watching the idiocy, racism, and this tomfoolery of Donald Trump in my youth coming up. Okay, it is breathtaking to me that the imbecility of Trump was shrewd enough to take over the party that represents the right flank of capital in this country and turn it into a monster of his own creation, to literally bring it to an almost kind of quasi-fascist position. And Trump was able to do that. But I don't think Trump does that alone. And I don't think and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think you would argue that Trump does that alone either. Because something that was said by Nancy Pelosi recently, I found fascinating. Nancy Pelosi said that Trump's protesters on Capitol Hill chose their whiteness over choosing democracy. And I said, this is fascinating. This is a woman who's worth tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, who probably has done more to help facilitate neoliberalism through her position in government than any Speaker of the House we've had going back on the Democratic side, going back several years.
Tip O'Neill, maybe?
Back to Tip O'Neill, whose class interests have never demonstrated any kind of serious allegiance to communities that we're concerned of, now saying that the protesters chose their whiteness over democracy. And one of the things, and I know that you do this with historical accuracy when you talk about the role of whiteness in shaping outperson ideology in America. In other words, who is the out group that the system will not work for? For me, I always reduce this to a simple reality that blackness and black people are reduced to being the reserve labor of army and capitalism in order to maintain the idea and the notions of the white majority that capitalism works for them and only fails black people. It is a necessary aspect of the way capitalism maintains itself to maintain racial subjugation to facilitate its exegesis. But Nancy Pelosi saying that these was their whiteness, I'm asking myself, so when Nancy Pelosi is actually giving cosigns to Trump's military budget or giving cosigns to neo-gentrific policy that's going to facilitate gentrification by bringing certain kind of financial assistance to large-scale real estate developers, because she's not choosing quote-unquote whiteness, is she choosing democracy? And should we applaud that? Because she's not swinging a Confederate flag.
Call that a race reductionist argument? Pascal,
this is very serious because, say again?
It's deadly serious. It's deadly serious.
It's very serious. Because let me tell you right now, because what I'm talking about is the way in which the language of race reductionism, which comes from a sincere desire for racial justice that many black people have, is easily by liberals give themselves cover for policy and notions and ideas and concepts that they implement that are profound damaging that any of these Yahoo crackers could be at any moment. And one of the dangers of simply looking through this lens that Nancy Pelosi is putting on this of racial reductionism is that I understand that there are people who will kumbaya you and wear kente cloth and put on MLK incense and oils all day and be liberal anti-racists who will gut your neighborhood with gentrification at the drop of a dime and tell you that you got to be careful of these Trump supporters. Neither are your enemy. Both are dangerous.
Right.
So I'd like you to talk to that before we get to the long
before you get to the real
political class.
Well, look, I mean, to be a liberal in the classic sense, of which I'd actually kind of put Pelosi in her ilk in that sense, is premised on negating history. Right? The whole foundation of it is upon negating history. And acting as if, there's the clean slate at whatever point of departure they want to start with, that they can then kind of implement their ideals and these abstract principles of democracy and equality and justice. And they have to kind of perpetrate in that direction in order to move that particular ideology forward, because they have never had a commitment towards resolving the contradictions of the earlier foundations, right? If anything, growing out of the ideology growing out of the Western European bourgeoisie, they wanted all the rights and privileges of the nobility, but they wanted to erase the embarrassment and belittlement of being part of the nobility. So it was in their interest to kind of erase history so that they could start basically as equals. And I think people should pay clear attention to that because it's a dynamic of this which continues to go forward. And Nancy's comments are rooted in a particular narrative that they have very carefully been trying to construct, really since the days of Jimmy Carter, which has failed them over and over and over again. But people need to go back and remember the race commission that Bill Clinton was trying to do, and what was it, 1996, if my memory serves me correctly. There was one of them that wound up being televised, and a guy white guy got up and said, "Then I don't want to be erased." Folks should go back. There was a very telling moment of kind of what type of reactionary politics was emerging clearly and was developing. And you can kind of see the intellectual seeds of what would happen with now was on full bloom, under the guise of Trumpism. But that was said very clearly. That was a counter narrative to this. We are perfecting the union, right? See, that's the narrative that the liberals are invested in, right? That we can construct a more perfect union that can be more inclusive of indigenous people, of Black people, of Latinos, of women, and that if you can believe in their amnesia, it was like, well, these were just kind of temporary blips, but what the founders intended was always pure and always open. And it therefore denies the material base of how the settler colonial project was established and why. But they keep trying to say that we can include you in, right, without dealing with the contradiction. Like, okay, y'all might be able to include or open the doors for a small segment of petty bourgeois folks to of all race and nationality, ethnicity, religion, whatever, to kind of enter into certain doors into the upper echelons of the ruling class, or some aspects of it, at least be close to it in proximity. Open up those doors, but it's not going to change the material foundation of how the society actually mediates itself and reproduces itself and all the relations underneath that. So we need to be very mindful of this. I'm glad you raised this because her comments speak to the whole talking points that Biden has put out, right? Build back better. I mean, really analyze that. Build back better ain't that much of a different strategy than make America great again. Really interrogate it. Ain't that much of a difference. But it appears to be much more inclusive because, we can build something back, but do it better by being more inclusive than we were in the past, right? And so you got this whole narrative that got spun, particularly with the rise of Obama, that, remember, we're supposed to be in a post-racial America. Y'all remember all that his election was signed and indication? Oh, yeah. They trying to go back to that. I mean, that is the whole narrative, the talking point. Right? That's it. That's it. This is Obama 2.0, in reality. And they trumping, they checking off all the different cards. Got to have, Black woman check. Got to have an indigenous woman check. Got to have, blah, 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 check.
Off like 8 cards.
Right. It also speaks to, this last week, I caught that comment too, Pascal, but also for Biden to get up there, on the dais and basically say that if this was BLM or if this was Black people, it would have been different.
You know what my response to that was? How many times are they arresting Al Sharpton and Nan on DC? Al Sharpton is protesting without a problem. Right. No problem. No one's arresting him. No one's coming after him. So what I'm trying to say is that I'm not trying to be obtuse and say that obviously there's not a racial nature to the way in which the ruling classes deals with people that are opposing the status quo politics. But again, one of the themes that I use Kali, hopefully we will interrogate this throughout this episode and further on. I use this phrase that because of the period in which I was born in. I was born in 1968, and I refer to what I call the 50-year counter-revolution. So if someone is a student yourself, you basically understand what I mean. Is that the period from the rise of the end of from King's assassination to the rise of Nixon to the contemporary political advance that we are in today. This does not happen accidentally. This is a 50-year project. Right. I call it the 50-year counter-revolution that was bipartisan, leaving the Bretton Woods agreement, the Bretton Woods system of economics with this one cent, the birth of neoliberalism, the birth of, getting off the gold standard, the birth of kind of privatization, hyper-privatization, the rise of black capitalism, the move away from socialism as being an agenda in terms of black politics, moving away from internationalism, the hyper-capitalization of black popular culture. All of these things happen, and that's only, we're just talking that within the context of black people. All of these things happen, and also the white left gets sucked into academia. All of these things transpire to particularly ground the left and even the discourse of the left to powder, and was done successfully. Right. Successfully.
Very successfully.
And what we have to realize is that in this, one of the consequences of this 50-year counter-revolution is that we don't understand that the heroes of the radical left in the past talked in the context of racism while challenging capitalism, imperialism, and sexism, and did not seem like they were selling out anything because they realized that you could not have one without the other. And we, in the 50-year counter-revolution, but we now have this concept of corporate diversity in the name of, Netflix and Black Lives Matter merging one together. We realize, particularly those of us who come from the left, that liberal anti-racism is reactionary. I wouldn't say it's reactionary as fascism, but it's reactionary because it's simply based on including a certain elite tier, some call them the petit bourgeois, some use professional managerial class of black, brown, yellow, gay, transgender people to facilitate the management of the Death Star, increase the inequality that will ground more of everyone to powder. You know what I'm saying? And what is so sad is that there are very few of our voices on the black left particularly who are seeing through this charade. Because when you start to talk like this, people get accused of, oh, you're a class reductionist, or you're this or that. I was like, listen to me. I don't know how your petit bourgeois, mom has a 6-figure job, dad has his own small business. It's talking about class reductionism when none of these folks who are Democrats or liberals who are remotely interested in changing the internal class contradictions that exist in the black community, but are funneling whatever the nonprofit of the day you're working with is to the low jaw with cash.
But let me say this: there's one piece I would push back on. I don't think it's an absence of knowledge, right? Or that folks don't know. Many folks have been well trained in these politics, actually, at least from a historical and academic perspective. Many folks are choosing not to engage in this politics. And that speaks to a deeper problem that I think we have to figure out how to confront, right? I think a large part of it has to do with folks really are leaning towards pragmatism because they don't believe that the long-term goals and objectives are actually attainable. So you have a pragmatic orientation which runs the day, for which left rhetoric actually gives a considerable amount of entree to, to dress up and to make more palatable, I think, to different forces, to at least make it feel and sound inclusive, right? When it really speaks to masking a class project in broad kind of colorful terms of inclusion. But it's not like a lot of folks actually don't know this. Like that's the piece that I think we're gonna have to really come to grips with and figure out how to do it.
Some people are in the back are playing for the fatback and biscuits for real, for real. They want.
Oh yeah, ain't no question. That's what I'm saying. Ain't no, and it's not. But it's not like we need to be clear. It's not like some of them folks don't know. They know very well, Pascal. That's what I'm saying. They making a conscious choice to go in another direction. But it's not ignorance. Like, oh, I didn't know this position, or like no, because some of y'all was in the same political training and ideological development as many of the rest of us. So you have made certain choices to do certain things because you felt it that was more palatable, or it would move more people, or would generate more resources. Particularly in the nonprofit orientation and framework that so much of activism now is shaped and structured by.
And here's another question I have for you, Kali. I read a lot of your anytime I see you've written an article, or I definitely see a lot of videos that you put up. And the image that I took from the show is a whole discussion you have about Lenin, and the Vanguard movement.
Mm-hmm.
Part of what we try to do with this show is reconnect Black folks, poor folks, working class folks to Marxist thinking. How hard was it for you guys to do this in Mississippi?
Well, it's still ongoing. It's
well,
still
I think
ongoing.
you've done it. From the work that I've seen, and I can only see it from the TV screen. I'm thoroughly impressed, and I want to learn what you guys are doing to make this information so easily palatable for so many people that have been told that this is the evil workings of some sort of McCarthy era bad guy or 80s era Rocky bad guy.
Well, that still gets put on us. I mean, the communist jacking and all that stuff by the right-wing forces here, black and white, that still happens. I would say part of the thing is lucky that, we are another generation espousing radical politics, but we're working on some foundations that was laid down, before us by some elders in the movement. So, a lot of people look at us as just the next generation of, that's some crazy ass Negroes. That's another crop of them that has just, emerged. And, we are, I think, kind of looked at as part of the kind of the natural continuation in the continuum of a lot of those positions articulated here. And that has its place, but it also has its enemies, right? Amongst Black folks. And I know one of the things that we do, or try to do here is frame our politics in the context of our history. Right? That's the thing. So I don't need, to me, I'm like, as rich as the struggle of history is here in Mississippi, and as rich as our own struggle is, I mean, I can invoke all the different principles around, Leninism very easily within the rhetoric of a Du Bois, or the rhetoric of a Robeson, or the rhetoric of a Richard Wright, or the rhetoric of Fannie Lou Hamer. Like it's all there. I can go to my own sources, to our own historical sources, and find both analogies and analysis, some of which predate some of the things, say, Lenin and some of these other folks, wrote, that you can draw upon to kind of impart the same message, the same language, the same orientation. And that way it feels organic, I think, to a lot of folks, and not something that's, out the picture or overseas. Now, internally, like, today we was doing a class, and we was, going over some of Lenin today, in fact, talking about some of the breakthroughs that strategically, I with believing that he made on this whole question around making a distinction between nationalism of the oppressed versus nationalism of the oppressors, right? And how that led to the whole formulation of his anti-imperialist strategy and what the Soviet Union did, at least for a period, following that line, right? And what the Communist International, what the Comintern did. So we were going through some of that in the context of just describing some of the difference in the history between the Rochdale pioneers in their early, stages in Mondragon and doing a contrast between one spoke to a context more articulated around class, that being the Rochdale project, and the Mondragon project being much more kind of oriented around national liberation in the context of the Bosch people trying to change their own circumstances, and saying that both of these find parallel in the Jackson Kush plan, to a younger generation of coming through us, and where we both draw, but also make distinctions between those two to make, to fit our particular circumstances here in Mississippi, and what's the foundation that we need to build upon. So, but I think it's really us drawing upon, our own history and our own narrative, and then introducing folks to the broader internationalist context, and to show people like, we are not the only folks who are grappling with these questions. And as a result, you could look at revolutionary movements all over the world and draw some lessons and learn some key things. Like, part of the thing that I'm got to find later on before I go back, treat this back. I was finna give out to our crew. I got to find a link to The Wind that Shakes the Barley. I don't know if folks are familiar with that film, but it's about the Irish independence movement.
Oh wow!
It's a Ken Loach film. Folks should check it out. It's about basically the struggle from I think the 1910s to the 1920s. That kind of covers that whole period. But the film focuses on the betrayal of the socialist and the communist forces at the end of the day by the more right-wing nationalist forces in the movement who made all these compromises with the British. So I'm just going to give that out to this younger generation of folks to say, like, look for parallels within this concrete historical example. To think that even though these folks are, at least within the U.S. context, white, you can remember that the Irish were originally were not white according to the English. Anyway, and they look for parallels.
And they worked with South Africa quite a bit.
Oh, a bunch of our liberation struggles. Yeah. So just like trying to get people to see these parallels is kind of what we do, but grounded in our history and the reading list. And one of the big things that I think is a form of the backdrop for folks who really want to understand like our work. I would say if you really want to understand kind of the deeper theoretical aspects of Cooperation Jackson's kind of theory and work, you got to pick up Black Reconstruction in America by W.E.B. Du Bois.
That's
I would argue that that's a
700-page read, man.
Hey, you got to do it, bro.
Hey, that's what Blinkets is for, right?
That's the blueprint. Yep.
Get it in 15 minutes.
Apparently, that's a read, brother.
All the knowledge you're carrying.
Well, you can break it down into chunks. You know what I mean? And it's a long-term project, but I always tell people that's a fundamental blueprint.
There's a question here that's coming up from a very, very dear friend of mine and a constant supporter of this show, and I think we should read it.
Shout out to Diana Gwynn.
Shout out to Diana Gwynn, once again, contributor and loves the show. She says, working class and poor people need real material solutions to their problems of existence. We also need workable alternatives to this capitalist system. How is this best achieved, especially now? Kali, as a man who's dedicating his life to making that achievement a reality, I give you the floor in addressing that, please.
And also, I'd like to add to that question. Can you are you part of the Black Socialists of America, or are you just like they're all kind of you guys all
Black Socialists in America?
In America,
we changed the name very specifically. Black Socialists in America. Yes, yeah.
I don't.
Yeah, I am a
wanna get
member.
fucked up on on some silly shit.
No, we had to change it. You know, we pushed for a change for some ideological reasons to make it. You know, like are you of this? And if you are of this, you know, one of the argumentation, then you're agreeing to be a part, you know, of the settler project. Now, to be bound to it and try to transform it, which in part means also committing one to a program of decolonization, you know, means that, you know, you dealing with the subject of the political entity, but not including yourself to being a part of this settler colonial project. So I think that's a very important distinction that I know myself and other folks as we join, you know, we're arguing, you know, but it's growing, it's developing. So definitely, you know, being a part of that. You know, not as much as I would hope to.
Nobody. That was my bad.
No. I'm just clarifying. I just want people to. That was just me to make sure that was clear.
But dual. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But that's how the organization started. So that's how most people will remember it. That's the name of you know how the comrade started.
Dual power is something that that they talk about a lot, or you guys talk about quite often. Would that have something to do with what Miss Gwen is asking right here?
Absolutely. I always try to start with saying, look, let's be materialist and let's ground ourselves in what is, because that's what ultimately is going to have to be used as the basis to transform, you know, society. And starting with that analysis, let's just look at some of the transformations that have happened since the pandemic, the COVID pandemic erupted. And there's been some positive developments in that since this started, basically since last February, right? Last March, February. And one of the beautiful but often overlooked things that I think is going to be a necessity for us moving in a direction, you know, that Diana, I think, is pushing for and questioning about, was the explosion of mutual aid efforts all throughout the empire, you know, particularly the first 4 months, you know, from I would say March, April, May, June, there was a deep and profound explosion of mutual aid efforts all throughout the United States. That was a beautiful thing, in part because to me it spoke to the neoliberal project has not completely broken all the bonds of solidarity in this society yet, and I don't think it ever concretely will. But how that exploded to meet the different needs of the community, often in inorganic ways, spoke to a deep need amongst working class people, you know, of how we are already kind of organizing ourselves to fill in the gaps where, you know, we aren't getting enough compensation within the capitalist system or aren't getting enough services within the overall state edifice and the benefits that have been won out of that, that people immediately kind of filled in the gap. So if we want to look at a deep program of transformation, I would argue that's what we need to start in the concrete right now, because that's what millions of people are already doing. Mm-hmm. Now, that has to be married, as we say, with two different forms of self-productive activity, right? Because one of the things about mutual aid oftentimes is just dependent upon what we can score, right? Like either what we already have on hand to distribute and give away, people come together and do a mutual exchange for time or goods or resources or barter, but that has its limits if we are not actually producing the goods and services to then distribute. And so there's two things that really have to be married with this organization. One, and that we try to start, you know, we are putting this out in what we call the Build and Fight program. We've been articulating this in little bits and pieces, you know, basically since last August, and was trying to work on a piece to describe this, which is about halfway finished. And this back has just kind of interrupted at least my contributions to it now for months. But that said, the other piece that we know that there are now millions of people throughout this empire doing is urban gardening and other forms of community gardening. Now, that we recognize is somewhat small scale, but given the degree of how many people are now just completely thrown out of work, the labor force to be able to kind of scale that up actually exists, but has to be organized so that we can start building concrete programs aiming towards both food security in the short term and food sovereignty in the long term, that we can make some critical transformations, and then, combine that with the efforts around the mutual aid distribution work and the solidarity work. We begin to ascertain concrete need, the real needs that are out there in the community, and start filling that up with our own productive capacity to fill it. And then one of the critical things that why this is so important is because we start doing production more orientated for need rather than producing commodities for market, to eliminate the commodities relationship that we are kind of bound in, that defines is one of the defining features of capitalism. So how do we break out that cycle? We got to marry those two things as a starting step. That's not sufficient, don't get me wrong, by any step in the stretch of the imagination, but it's a concrete step. Then the other critical component of that, ultimately, which is going to be the most transformative, is moving workers, right? The multinational working class, moving it to greater degrees of self-organization. And we put that there's two kind of primary components to that. One is encouraging folks to do more cooperative development, particularly worker cooperatives. And then the other component is encouraging folks, wherever you may work, to start making the democratic transition at your workplace, right? For me, that's going to start with union organizing that up, scaling that up, but then making the push politically for power, right? And transforming the ownership of it to put it under worker ownership, so to cooperatize all these industries. And I'm talking, don't get me wrong, or don't think I'm just talking about small scale, but we need to ask ourselves, why the hell is Amazon, not a cooperative? Or how come it couldn't be a cooperative? And then be the foundation, the basis of a broader program of transformation, given the nature of both its technology infrastructure and its actual material infrastructure. What if that was redirected under workers' control to deal with the actual concrete needs and start producing more again, and distributing, in this case, more to need than to fulfill market kind of relations? Those are three fundamental components that people can and will do in the real world, not speculative stuff, because there's already motion, and we've seen correspond to that. Folks need to go back and remember the effort of workers, particularly in April and May, that there was all these spontaneous wildcats that were emerging. Some at Amazon, some at Whole Foods, but there were folks at Target who were organizing, and a bunch of these other kind of retails. Like the objective piece, I think, of kind of a party or a movement is to link all these different things together so they work in coherent solidarity with each other and begin to do a broad level of coordination in the strategy. And that was one of the principal reasons why we tried to step out there and start this coalition, this effort to deal with the pandemic and the transformative potential they potentially have if workers were in control of both dealing with it directly, particularly starting at the point of production. But that's one of the reasons why, we stepped out there and tried to initiate this coalition that became known as the People's Strike, which is still moving, still directing and trying to deal with this pandemic and the transformative pieces of it. Then the fourth component I would highlight, that we really would need to get serious about if we were in any form or fashion moving in that direction and start to be successful, given the overall nature of the political dynamics that we talked about, is that we're going to have to defend ourselves from the reactionary forces and the capitalists who would definitely view our efforts to democratize the workplace and to transform the ownership as a dire threat. Best believe they would start applying some hammers. So we're going to have to organize some major self-defense networks in all the totality of what that means, the level of community organizing that would be necessary, the training, the skilling up, the information networks, all those different things that would need to be built up. And in order for all this to be facilitated in a democratic manner, we definitely have to pull together people's assemblies, right? Or some form of popular power on the road to building that dual power that you were talking about. But those are the 5, kind of elements. And we frame that, as people, when it comes out, in kind of Gramscian terms, is to say that these, first kind of 5 practices are the practices, that you could define, as the practices of position, leading ultimately to broader practice of maneuver that we could talk about later. But to answer that question, those are some things that we are articulating that people already in the real world are doing. There's already folks doing community gardening everywhere. There's already folks doing mutual aid work. There are already workers organizing and fighting back. How do we put that together is the fundamental question, and to what aim and what objective is the piece that we are trying to interject in this population. And we want one amongst many, but we think that there are some real things that folks already in motion can do to move concretely in this direction. And we're going to have to, I think, given what's coming down the pipeline the next 4 years, because I think many people are under the illusion that there's going to be a bunch of relief coming down the pipeline. There's going to be some radical changes in opening up social services around medical care and all that. You stop fantasizing to yourself. That's not going to happen under the Biden administration, nor with the slim majority they have in control of both the House and the Senate. That ain't going to happen. Even if they had greater, it ain't within their ideological framework or political commitments or class interests to move in that particular way. So we're going to have to build what we need from the bottom up, regardless of the illusions that people might have of what could happen in those halls or what's not going to happen in those halls. But people are in motion. That's the good thing. Now, I think we had a profound opportunity to do, to put some of these things in motion with the Floyd Rebellion. And I know for a fact all of that energy is not dissipated in any form or fashion. I think it was diverted, unfortunately, but predictably it was diverted, by the electoral kind of season and all the energy around that. But I think, in about 2 or 3 months, as the reality of the Biden administration sinks in, and what its limitations are of its own making, not just because of the constraints going to be put on it, by the Republican Party and the assorted reactionaries that are around it, but by its own constraints, as it's not able to deliver as the pandemic continues to rage. I think folks start getting back to capture some of that initiative, and I think hopefully, we will learn some of the proper lessons collected of what we did and what we did wrong in 20 and come back stronger.
All right.
Pascal, do you have something you want to add?
Yes, I want to get into that. We're going to try to do it in 15 minutes if we can.
Yeah.
Brother Kali, I know that you're tired, you got the pain in the back, but as someone who has worked with this particular phenomenon, as a student and scholar of Black political history that you are, and I know you are, I want to talk about how the formation of an entity that started within this 50-year period of counter-revolution, which is the Black political class, the 10 to 15,000 Black elected officials we have in the United States that has governed largely within the confines of the Democratic Party, to an increasing diminished returns for the majority of Black people who, even in your own city of Jackson, have governed over lots of controversy in terms of police misconduct, lots of questions in terms of are they governing a police state in blackface, lots of questions in terms of are the internal class contradictions of Black society still so great that the Black political class is functioning largely for patronage within the confines of the Democratic Party to the detriment of the majority of Black people who are poor and working class. even to the point that though that Cooperation Jackson and the Jackson Kush Plan are rooted in working class black political solutions, is the ultimate reality of the fact that, at least on the electoral level, if not more, black politics is a class politics. And the class of black people it works for are not the majority of black people. Would you not agree with me that trying to achieve a working class solution for black people, black and brown people, with the confines of black politics may be a bit of a dead-end street, and the necessity of creating other formations, other types of solidarity, other types of collective efforts politically, third-party alternatives, if you will, outside the Democratic Party, become a necessity to break the duopoly of this bourgeoisie stronghold on what politics in America actually are.
Mm-hmm. I'd agree, but 10 minutes ain't gonna do it justice. So we need to come back. We need to come back and really explore this. And I'm saying that earnestly because the past 10 years has sharpened my view. I'm not gonna say changed my view, but definitely sharpened my view around this question.
Sharpened that you are more in line with my basic analysis that I shared with you.
Not just more aligned, but I think there's even in articulating that, I would argue that we still have some blind spots that only really get exposed when you get your head kicked in a couple of times. And I done had mine kicked in a couple of times, to see where I was still holding on to certain fallacies and expectations and hopes and dreams.
Really?
That certain forces would come around, get with the program, do the right thing, kind of thing.
So we have to, brother, we're gonna have to bring you back, and we're gonna have to do a thorough,
Oh yeah, I invite it. I think
if you're down, we know you're a busy cat. But if you're down,
I'm down.
I think that we can get you and Cedric and maybe Jared Ball together in a room, and let's do a thorough interrogation of black politics from Black Power to today. Good, bad, and ugly.
Johnson? Colin?
Say it again.
Are you familiar with Cedric Johnson?
Yeah. I mean, we don't know it. I know of the work. You know what I mean? We never really dialogue direct
revolutionary race leaders.
Yeah.
He's a friend of the show.
Oh yeah. I love the book. I was giving it out. Yeah, I was giving that book out to a bunch of folks in December. And I put it on my Facebook twice and saying that folks want to understand a lot of what's going to happen, under the Biden administration. This is one of the books you need to read because we done been down this path. A
lot of our comrades who stuck between 1966 and 72 in their politics, they don't want to hear that conversation. You know who our comrades are who are stuck between 1966 and 1972.
What's worse? I'm sorry to cut you off, but what's worse, being stuck in the Black Power past or being stuck in the mode of electoral politics is the only way?
That's basically the same thing. That's basically the same. I mean, you got other variants of it, which think that we can totally ignore how the state functions and what it does. That leads you to another set of traps too. But no, that's kind of fundamentally the same thing. But I mean, look, this is why. Let me state to folks why I really want us to do this, and I invite Cedric and Jared and some other folks. Let's definitely do it because we're gonna see poverty pimping these next 2 years on a level that was unimaginable in 1968, 1970, and 1972. Like that is already written in the script. And the degree to which, the impetus of the Floyd rebellion had moved the liberal establishment to play into this game and to promote it and uphold it. We ain't ready for that yet. So I'm gonna put it back on you, Pascal. The question you were talking about, Nancy Pelosi's framing. That's what that comes from. That's a response to the Floyd rebellion.
I agree with that. I agree with that. No,
straight up.
I see the logic of what you're putting together.
Well, that was,
it's part of the same thing with the Kente cloth.
Yeah, I was just about to say that Kente, whatever the hell it was, that Kente porn or whatever the hell they was doing. That's all part of the same logic, but we need to go back and interrogate it even further, because we really need to look at the role the Black political class played in destroying Bernie Sanders' campaign.
Oh, you got to come back, brother. We might have to set you up for Black History Month or another part of March or sometime. We're gonna have to set this up.
We just need to schedule it out. But I'm down because look, this is gonna be comrades in the Black Alliance for Peace. Particularly one of my old comrades and old boss and mentor, Jamu Baraka. He's been pushing hard, and I wholeheartedly agree with saying 2020 was going to be the year that we had to expose basically the Black petty bourgeoisie for its bankruptcy. I think 2021, we got to fully highlight how that's going to play out, how that's going to roll out. A lot of people ain't going to like it. A lot of people are going to be mad. This ain't got nothing to do with personal. We always trying to, deal with the structural contradictions and implications and open up a dialogue and a line of struggle for us to kind of make some corrective paths, because the route that we're going now, people may be basking in the temporary defeat of the neo-Confederates and neo-fascists, but another 4 more years of neoliberalism, they're going to come back stronger,
it's like
harder.
Are you a Star Wars fan? Are you a Star Wars fan at all?
Oh, yeah.
Have you been watching The Mandalorian at all?
Loved it. Man, don't get me started on that, because I'm like, why did I watch 3 garbage, movies when y'all could have had the director of Mandalorian do all that and gave us a classic product?
He's saying that one episode with Bill Burr, he said they'll be begging us to come back.
To come back.
They'll be, and I got to get you. So that being said, that you're a Star Wars fan, one of the friends of the show also is Michael Harris, Dr. Michael Harris, that wrote a book as a grand narrative for the left called Welcome to the Rebellion, using Star Wars as a grand narrative for the left. So
I haven't got to that yet. Somebody just put me up on that last summer. So I'm going to have to get that on my list.
I have to show this to you before you go, because this is peak liberal bullshit. Can y'all see that?
I see MF.
Is
that MF Doom?
That's Kobe Bryant, MF Doom, John Lewis, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, with Nancy Pelosi and Kente cloth, and Stacey Abrams standing over her.
Oh my!
Send that one to me.
MF Doom?
Got you.
Send that one to me.
I'll send it to you.
My man MF has got to be rolling in his grave. Like, I ain't no way in hell y'all can be
MF Doom. That's terrible, man. MF
wow.
He didn't hurt nobody, man. Why they gotta do MF Doom, man?
That shit came out after that, after the Georgia thing happened. And when I saw that, I was like, huh. And I saw that. And then there was a picture, the very iconic picture of Malcolm with the rifle looking out the window. They took his head off and put Joe Biden's head.
Oh, come on, man.
Hey, the internet is undefeated, man. There's some of the stuff I've seen come out. My favorite one, I'm gonna try to get a poster of it, was Trump, Biden kissing the Viking dude. Have y'all seen that one?
Yes, Smell.
Oh, I love that one. I was like, whoever came out with that one was sick.
Viking.
And then I saw, and I saw another one. Somebody first, I just saw the picture one first, and then the second one said, he was whispering in his ear, "Join me." I was like, "Yep, that's
The one that made me walk away from all devices was when they did the end scene in Endgame, but Thanos was Trump. And then Black Panther was like, who was it? It wasn't Obama, but Nancy Pelosi was one of the Avengers, and fucking Kamala Harris. Pete Buttigieg was Spider-Man. I was like, oh my God. I was like,
this is so horrible, man.
I just want to be in a room when y'all is coming up with this shit. I just want to sit there with some popcorn and be like, this is beautiful.
It's undefeated, man. It's undefeated.
Well,
Colin, thank you for taking the time to talk to me.
And Colin, man, I hope that you feel better, brother. And comrade, we got to get you on the show again. We got to have another roundtable, and we really do a deep dive into Black politics from Black Power to today. And
are your weekends super packed up, Collie?
We just got to,
schedule
right now because of this back. I'm actually more just laying down, sleep more of the time. So it's just making sure, we can schedule it out. And the proper thing is I gotta dose up with enough time to be, lucid and not have, like drool coming down my mouth and stuff like that. So if we can time it out, then, then I can sit down for a minute. But like now I can tell you, after this conversation, ain't nobody's fault. I'm glad we did this. But tomorrow I'm gonna be right here on this floor, laid out on my back pretty much all day. That's how it goes. So I just got to make sure we pace it out. So I would say give me about a week. We're gonna hit it up again, and then so about a week and a half. Because
everyone has to. All these guys are going back to classes and get this schedule together. You got time. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but we're going to do it.
Yeah, we'll work it out. We'll work it out. I definitely want to do it. I was telling Pascal, I've been checking out a couple of shows, and I appreciate what y'all putting out. We don't have enough of this out there, so keep doing it.
Appreciate that, brother. Thank you.
On the radio. Yeah.
Well, we try to bring.
Thank you very much, Kylie. We appreciate you, brother. And back as a touring musician that has literally had back spasms on stage from years of hanging upside down and jumping off of amplifiers and everything else and falling. I didn't understand the importance of back stretching in yoga until I had a back spasm in Charlotte, North Carolina in 2013. Collapsed. So I feel you. I'm with you.
Well, I'm working on it. I'm working on it. I think some old age and some old injuries caught up on me. But, and I just, I think part of it was my old hard-headedness that made it work. Because I just thought it was normal back problems and kind of kept working, in September and early October. And then, it just let me know, nah, bro, this ain't your normal piece. So we're going to have to deal with it. I'm still trying to avoid surgery, and I think it can be avoided. But, it's just going to take some time.
There's enough musicians that watch this from years. We're all touring friends, and we all sit around and we tell horror stories about the back issues and every other issue that we have. And if they're mildly successful, then they have gotten surgery. So no, it's a real thing with all of us, man. So I feel you. So have a good night, brother, and we appreciate you.
Will do.
Collie, I appreciate you doing this, brother. No, this was a good build, as the young ones like to say. And there's a lot more to build about. You were one of those brothers out here who, as someone who, was privileged to spend 10 years working with Bruce Dixon, I know how much he engaged in the Cooperation Jackson project with you on the pages of Black Agenda Report.
Oh, yeah.
And I can definitely say that, you were holding up the banner of a good tradition in the Black left by keeping the rigorous literary tradition of the reading of left material, not falling for the tropes of some of these young, quote unquote black leftists who say Marx is white thing. How can you let that be influencing our mind? All of this various reaction to using different. I'm like, when people say that, I ask, why are you using electricity? Why are you driving a car? I mean, it's just all kinds of ridiculous nonsense.
Let this man go. He got to lay down.
But thanks very much, Kylie, and we're gonna have you on soon.
We'll do it again. Looking forward to it. Appreciate y'all.
Absolutely. All right, brother.
All right.
That was Kylie Akuno from Cooperation Jackson. We put some links up. So in all of the chats, I put a link up to his book. I put a link up to Cooperation Jackson. I also put a link up to the Black Socialist in America, not of America. Don't come fucking with me. I said in America. I don't want that shit. Here's a post from the UK. UK Labour Party just had a lifelong socialist leader and who got his head turned to work against working class and party democracy. Treat elected officials as super unreliable friends. I mean, the Labour Party was a problem for a while, and then Jeremy Corbyn came in, and the treatment that he got has been pretty fucking horrible. And that's the understatement of all times.
Yep.
They tried to say he was anti-Semitic. I'm sure they would try to do the same thing to Bernie Sanders. I think they did even try to say Bernie Sanders was on some anti-Semitic shit, didn't they?
It would have come at some point.
That's everybody's out. I do want to show this one thing. Hold on, Pascal. Talk to the people for a minute. That's all you. Talk to the people.
Talk to the people. All right. He just left. He said, talk to the people. I hope you, ladies and gentlemen, enjoyed our show tonight. We're going to continue trying to bring that kind of quality of guests to the program so we can discuss not only the left politics, but, the overall agenda of what's going on with both parties, and also bring individuals who are actually trying to implement black left politics in real praxis in their various localities and communities, and taking it out of theory and into actual practical reality.
I just wanted to thank you for doing the public service announcement while I walked away. Thank Hannah Appel.
Oh, Hannah, you got Hannah's book? I still got mine yet.
So Hannah sent us a book, and I always ask if I can get an autographed copy. She giggled at me when I said that on air. She definitely autographed it. Also, I've been lagging on showing this, but my good friend, my homie, my dog, Napoleon the Legend, sent me some of his fire mixtapes and albums. He put out like 10 records, I think, last year, and he's on the pace to do something very similar again this year. If you're looking for some, not just, I don't want to say woke hip hop, because it's not just like woke hip hop. He's definitely on some real deal socialist shit. He's definitely on some real deal revolutionary shit, and the motherfucker can flow. Napoleon the Legend, you might know him. He made the music for the Michael Brooks show. He's on Nomiki Kant's show quite often. Friend of show. He's a friend of show and a personal friend of mine. I was actually talking to him late last night. I sent him a message. I was like, brother, you got to watch Fear of a Black Hat. That shit is on Amazon. Watch it right now. So Pascal, from time to time, I call you Pasquale.
Yes, Pasquale, and I see your friend
is on the show right now.
Yes.
Pasquale is one of my best friends. He's like family. He's been in a ton of bands, and I last saw him during a rough time during tour in New Mexico, where he lives. He's definitely part of this left tradition. He comes from would you call yourself a red diaper baby, Pascal? Pasquale?
I'm a red diaper nephew.
I think both Pascas is
I'm a red diaper nephew, not particular baby, but I have two uncles who studied in the Soviet Union during the Cold War. So my family had some red politics, but my dad was never. He was ideologically a fellow traveler in some ways, but he was never actually organized in membership. But that kind of politics was very familiar to my household.
Also, this show most likely will be on Zero Books in the next couple of weeks. So if you're watching on Zero Books, subscribe to Zero Books. Definitely subscribe to the YouTube channel if you can, if you feel so inclined and you want to help the show grow. Become a patron. This shit's expensive to do.
Subscribe, please. Like, share.
Pasquale's dad is a he's a professor too, isn't he? I've met both of his folks, good people.
All right.
So that being said, I want to leave with a clip of Kali on Democracy Now, giving a very great in-depth analysis on the Trump tax cuts. I was excited to get Kali on the show. I think we were both excited for slightly different reasons, but kind of the same reason. Every time I see him on one of these bigger shows, he's got such a great fucking analysis that's so succinct about why certain things are problematic. And him talking about the Trump tax cuts and how it was going to truly affect people, poor and working class people, is so important. And I think we probably would have got more pushback as a nation had his voice or voices like his really been heard. And there really wasn't much. Maybe you disagree with me, Pascal. Like, I felt like the pushback against the Trump tax cuts came from more partisan lines of just orange man bad and not a real analysis of how really, really hamstring poor people. So I'll let you give your opinion on that real quick for you yawn on camera.
No, I agree with you. I think the Trump's tax cut was, one of the many wealth transfers upward that happened during his presidency, and it was just another example of the ruling class looking out for the 1%. Not surprising at all. It's not surprising to me also that Obama made the Bush tax cuts permanent in exchange for almost nothing. So we've had 3 administrations of regressive tax law.
Yes. And it's not going to get any better with this current administration because apparently he's talking about spending more money, but the rollout's been really bad for the vaccine. So the vaccines, we'll see how well that's been working. That's a whole other episode. We will be back Thursday, same bat time, same bat channel, 6:00. We'll be talking a lot more about what's going on right now. Who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? If impeachment proceedings will start, I think they will. We'll see. We also are going to talk a little bit about these capital cases. Trump has put more people to death in the last month of office than any president in history, and he's putting to death the first woman in like 67 years. And this woman definitely has some mental health challenges, and that's why a lot of people have been pushing back on her even getting the death penalty. So we'll be talking about all that and more Thursday, and tomorrow will be the premiere of this show on the Zero Books channel. They'll be airing our episode with Dr. Asatar Bear, titled "Does Marxism Have Value for Black People?" That's going to be the first episode that they air, so I'm excited for that. Are you juiced for that, Pascal?
Yes, indeed.
So somebody already got Kali's book. Good shit. All right. Here is Kali Akuno explaining to everyone why the Trump tax cuts are affecting you negatively.
Jackson, Mississippi. You're deeply involved with issues of economic democracy. Talk about this tax bill. What does it mean?
Well, I mean, it's one of the greatest transfers of wealth from the working class to the rich I think, in history, not just American history, but history. I think when you look at all the details that are coming out and all of these little backdoor deals, these plausible denials by folks like Corker, they only go so far, but the details are there. You know, this is going to help a narrow sliver of folks within the United States, and folks like, you know, myself and a lot of the folks in Mississippi, we're going to be drastically hurt by this bill. You mentioned one of the kind of the fallouts, which is already happening around millions of people losing their health care. I'm likely going to be one of those people as a result of this tax bill. When I filed for, you know, my application, it said that my rates were going up from $900 a month, which is already outrageous, to damn near $2,000. Excuse me for that, but just the emotion of what I'm going to have to deal with. And given my income, that largely makes it almost impossible for me. And I earn a little bit more than the average person in Mississippi. So you can just imagine that there's only one healthcare provider now that's going to be within the affordable healthcare markets in Mississippi. And if that's the rate that they're charging as a result of, you know, the pullbacks from Trump with the subsidies that he already had announced, and you look at what this tax bill is basically going to do, we're going to be suffering this next period immensely.
What about Roy Moore losing, Doug Jones winning, even with Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act being passed only by Democrats? President Obama said we will wait for Scott Brown, who had been elected in Massachusetts, a Republican senator, to be seated before we go for this major vote, because the people of Massachusetts have spoken. But Mitch McConnell has clearly said that this vote will take place before Christmas, so that, what that will lead to is Doug Jones, who was elected in the special election, will not be able to participate in this.
Well, I think Doug was trying to aim to allay some fears yesterday on his CNN interview, when he basically said that he was going to look to try to find some common interest, you know, with the Republicans. He was clearly aiming at a re-election bid, you know, coming up in 2020. So it's also another case we're not quite sure, even if he's seated, honestly, right now, where he would vote. I mean, he's clearly what we would call in the old school days a Dixiecrat, and I think he self-described himself as a blue dog Democrat. So it's not quite clear. We would hope that he would be one of the people who stands in opposition to this tax bill, and we would hope that Coker would come to his senses and also oppose it. But that's a lot of hope, and I think, you know, that we're kind of stretching thin. I think the real question is how are we going to organize in the long term to not only defeat this tax bill, but they're coming from Medicaid, they're coming from Medicare, they're coming from Social Security. Paul Ryan has already said that they're going to look at that next year. So we got a serious fight on our hands that we got to get prepared for. They
will so disadvantage states and cities that they will then be forced to cut services.
That's right. That's right. I mean, they're already looking at that. And then in our case in Mississippi, we have a Tea Party super legislative majority in our state legislature. They're already looking to add more cuts to what the federal government is also doing with this tax cut. So for places like Jackson, it could be severe austerity the next couple of years. So that's something that we hope is not the case, but we're kind of gearing up, expecting that, you know, prepare for the worst.
I'd like to ask you to stay after the show so we can post two, particularly looking at Jackson, Mississippi, and what you've done there and how the Trump administration impacts that. But before we go, a very quick comment on your deep concerns about white supremacy in the United States right now under President Trump.
It's not just here. Let me state that. I was recently in Europe, and I witnessed reports on the fascist threats in Italy, and now there's a far-right member sitting in the Austrian government. I have deep concerns about this playing out throughout the world, but particularly here, looking at Donald Trump, there's white supremacy and then there's neoliberalism, which is emerging, as I would argue, and I think many people would argue, with a serious fascism that could threaten life on this planet as we know it. So it's not just a minor concern. I think it's a deep concern that all of us should have.
I want to thank you for being with us. Kali Akuno is with Cooperation Jackson and has written the book Jackson Rising, The Struggle for Economic Democracy and Black Self-Determination in Jackson, Mississippi. And I also want to thank David Sirota, who broke the story in the International Business Times about...